Hi everyone, this video is going to be my build for the Diecast Mafia's Tracks Challenge, in which you have to build something with tracks. So for this I'm using a Hasegawa 172 scale M-1 Abrams. Now this is a model kit, so I'm kind of bending the rules here, but I did ask permission, so we'll see if this gets through or not. At this point in the build I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to build a car tank or an actual apocalypse tank. But first I'm just going to start building the kit and then go from there. So I start by making the main gun and then add the coaxial machine gun. I then assemble the rest of the turret body. And then use some clamps to hold everything together while the glue sets. For this I'm using some poly cement because it fuses the plastics together, but it takes a little longer to harden, so it leaves me some time to do any last minute adjustments in case I haven't quite put it together right. Next I move on to the hull of the tank. The next step with the instructions is to add some bits to the turret. Apologies if this is a little hard to see. I was filming later in the day and the sun kind of went down without a moment's notice, so the footage becomes grainy. But here I'm just adding some storage racks on the side. As well as these smoke launchers, which again were a little fiddly to do because I cut them off the sprue and then we tried to figure out which one goes on which side because they're both the same, but I ended up figuring it out. So at this point I decided to wait until night time to finish building the rest of the tank, just because the lighting was going all over the place, so I just decided to wait until I could use indoor lights and have some consistent lighting. So moving on, I added the hatches and the machine guns. And here on the other side I have the storage rack and the smoke launcher. I also add this little radio antenna on the back. And this small little piece that goes on behind the hatch, which I think is another part of the radar antenna, but I'm not too sure because I don't know tanks that well. But it was a little fiddly to get on because it's just a tiny little piece. I struggle to get on, but I finally get it on there. So next we move on to putting the road wheels onto the hull. This is quite easy because they're all built as one piece, and so there's a few little pieces to glue in place. This kit uses fixed tracks, which I know a lot of other model builders I watch prefer when they're building these tanks. Personally, I prefer the rubber band because it allows you to have the working tracks, but I know a lot of the model builders I watch usually build their tanks as a static piece, whereas I build my things to eventually be used in animations. So as you can see from the one I've already done, I don't usually build tanks, I usually build cars, and so there's a bit of a gap, but luckily when I put the top of the hull on this, you won't really see that gap. So first I glue this lower section of the track onto the road wheels. And then off camera I'd already bent this one to shape and glue the rear section on over the rear wheel. Next I do the front one, and now to show you how I bent these into shape, I just take these needle nose pliers and just each track individually kind of bend slightly until I get a somewhat of a curve, and then I glue that one in place. And easily enough the top ones just glue on the top, although I do have to remove a little bit on the edge just to get them to fit in line up right. After this I glue on the top section of the hull, which like I said covers the little gaps and stuff that I've made. On this I add on the side skirts, which in the instructions it does say to cut out this rear section that goes over the rear wheels, but personally I kind of should have kept it as is because I think it would have looked a lot better, but I cut it out on one side so I had to do it for the other side so it looked consistent. After this the instructions say to glue on these little headlights, which again being a small piece are a little fiddly to get in there, but I do eventually get them there with the needle-nose pliers. I also have to put this little tow hook on the back, which again being a small piece it's kind of fiddly to get on there, but I get it done. Finally I glue the hatch lid open. You can glue it open or closed, but I'm going to have the crew figure so I glue it open. And then I simply just assemble the crew figure. Now in the instructions it does say I'm going to have to remove a lower portion of his legs to get him to fit in the hatch, which I'll do that later. And here we have the fully assembled M1 Abrams. There's also a Hot Wheels Volvo 850 Estate just to show you kind of scale. Again at this point I wasn't too sure what kind of tank I was going to build, I just thought I'd build the tank first and then kind of let that inspire me on what I was going to do. So after quickly looking through the Gaslands rulebook, because I've been trying to build more cars within the rules of the Gaslands, come across the sponsor Rutford, which use a lot of military vehicles and are actually allowed to field a tank or a helicopter, which might be a future build if I can find a kit. So it made perfect sense to build a Rutford sponsored tank. The first thing I do is I want to make some botched repair panels using these armor plates I got from the North Star Miniatures from the North Star military figures implements of carnage sprue. I cut these pieces already off camera and I'm just gluing them in place. So I glue them on the hull and then some on the turret. So next I wanted to add some stuff to it just to make it look less like just a tank. So I went through my bits box and found this old Hot Wheels Nomad grille and bumper that I took off a previous build. And figured this would be a great trophy, that they probably killed the car and then just took the front grille and kept it as a trophy and added to the front of the tank. In keeping with this I also added these chrome skulls just to add to the effect. Moving back to the turret, I found this radar addition from a bits box, also again from the Abrams carnage sprue, and just thought that would make a good addition to the turret. Next I decided to add some stowage to the racks on the back of the tank. These are Red Dog 172 stowage pieces. I'm not too sure if they're all from the same pack or if I just bought a bunch of packs, but they're in my bits box, so that's what they're from. So I added a few taps and some pouches and such and some crates. Just general supplies and stuff that they probably have on the tank with them. Also, going back from my bits box, I found this steering wheel and thought, in keeping with the front grille being a trophy, that this was another trophy that they just kind of took and put on the side. So after this I cut down the crewman and glued him in place. I had to reposition his arms so that it looked like he was holding onto the machine gun. So next I wanted to add some battle damage to the tank, because my figure is that this thing gets shot at a lot like any real tank would. It would be just a bullet magnet. Now for this I would usually use my pen drill, but I don't have a drill piece small enough, so instead I've just put a new blade on my hobby knife and just used this very fine point on that to drill some more small holes in. Once I had the small holes, I then gouge out those holes to kind of make it look like the metal's being all twisted in metal, just to sell the effect that this has been hit with a bullet or something. Although in this case, being a tank, it'd probably more likely be a artillery shell of some kind or a cannon. So moving on to the painting, I start with a base of Revell aqua colour olive green. After this I paint the repair panels and anything else that I intend to be rusty, Revell rust. I also paint the tracks the same colour because these things would get rusted up being gone through all the terrain and stuff. Next I took a dark green that I'd mixed up with some leftover paint and painted this tarp on the back, the pouches and the crewman's uniform. For the crates I used some Revell mud brown. I also used some Revell stone grey for the tarp on the side here. For the crewman I used Revell flesh to paint his skin. So off camera I made some more steering wheels and glued them on. So for the first one here I'm just going to paint this with some Revell leather brown. I also used this on the straps for the crate. I painted the other steering wheel again using some Revell mud brown. I also used this for the skull cap for the crewman. And then the final steering wheel I used Revell matte black. I then reused the Revell matte black to paint the rubber sections of the road wheels on the tracks. I then used some Revell beige to paint the skulls. Unfortunately my camera just been a bit of a pain and it just didn't want to focus on here, so it's a bit of a blurry mess. Next I stippled on some Revell metallic silver onto the metal panels just to make them look rusted. I also used the Revell metallic silver for the bullet holes. So for the corrugated panels I did want to use the same effect and just stipple on some Revell metallic steel, but it didn't really show up that well, so in the end I just ended up painting them. I also dry brushed on some dark steel onto the tracks to show where the tracks had made contact with the ground and just rubbed away, so the metal was constantly getting the paint and rust rubbed off of it and scratched off of it as this thing was driving over all sorts of terrain. And then used some Revell matte black to paint the machine guns. I also used some Revell metallic silver on the radar dish. So next I wanted to put a Rutherford logo on this, and I did try and make a stencil but it just didn't work out. So in the end I settled on just freehand drawing Rutherford onto the side panel with a pencil, some Revell matte white paint, as you can see here. So after this, I used the chipping technique to apply some Revell metallic silver around the edges. For this I just dunked some bit of sponge into the paint and then dabbed it off on a piece of tissue paper here and get as much paint off as you can, and then just lightly apply it around all the edges to show kind of chips and scrapes as this thing has been driving around. Following this, I lightly painted on some Revell Bronze onto the corrugated panels. Finally, I used my homemade black wash to kind of blend everything together. And here we have the final build. I did have to go back and retouch up the logo because the black wash kind of just killed it and you could barely see it. So I had to go back over that again. I also changed the colour of the tab on the back and the pouches to Revell Leather Brown because it kind of just blended in too much to the body. Now when I was building this, considering this was a Rutherford vehicle, I was going to slap a lot of rockets on it, but it's also a tank already, so I just felt that was a bit too overkill. Because obviously you've got a tank, you don't need extra rockets. Just to kind of make it a bit more balanced, a bit more fair. So I felt quite happy with how this turned out because this was my first attempt at building a vehicle that was compliant with the rules as well as compliant to one of the sponsors, and I feel I did a really good job keeping it within those two restraints. Hopefully I can build some more like this in the future. As usual, please stick around for the glamour shots and little short animation at the end, and I hope you all enjoy the video, and I'll see you in the next one.